to Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the bookstore for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. From IT professional to battle tested real estate investor and coach specializing in single family construction and rentals, none other than Mr. Frank Iglesias. Welcome, Mr. Frank, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah, Frank Iglesias here, a real estate investor out of the Atlanta, Georgia market. Been in real estate now for over 16 years, investing in a number of different properties. Uh, that's what I've been up to lately. Also, former IT professional, former music teacher, and yeah, just making things happen in the world of business.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Frank. Thank you. And today let's talk about coaching is a vital to business. Tell us when we say coaching is vital, what specific business outcomes beyond a vague better performance do you see directly and measurably linked to effective coaching?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer in coaching because the reality is, if you think about professional sports teams, they all have coaches. Like, you never go out and see a football, a baseball, basketball team, and they're just figuring it on their own. There's always a coach, a head coach, and there's always a supporting cast of coaches, a supporting team of people, so that that team can win to the highest level possible. Well, business is no different. Okay, if you're out there doing business and you're trying to do it all on your own, your runway is going to be very limited. You usually have to surround yourself with people to help you succeed. Maybe it's internal team members, it's a coach, maybe it's a team of coaches and an internal team in your company, depending on what it is you do. But nobody succeeds on their own. You need people to help you. And that coach is that person that guides you along the way. And hopefully, the coach is someone that's been there, done that, so to speak, right? They've had success, they've also had failure, they've had both. So that when you come across success and failure, because you will have both in your business journey, that that person will be able to help you navigate those waters. So I'm a big proponent of coaching, and I tell people that if you're going to be in business, have a coach. I would never do business without a coach. No different than again, going back to my analogy, just like you would never see a professional sports team without a coach. It just doesn't happen.
Have a coach, people. Have a coach indeed. And how do you distinguish for a skeptical leader between business coaching, mentoring, consulting, and just plain good management?
So, the best way I could say is oftentimes they're similar. Like in the entrepreneur space, you'll hear the word coaching. But if I go into the corporate world, a lot of times you'll hear the word consulting, right? Even though oftentimes it's the same, you don't usually hear about coaching. If you're going to have like a team of people, say you have a team of salespeople, you're probably not bringing in a coach. I mean, you could, but a lot of times in the business world, you bring in consultants. Serves a similar function. Um, so a lot of times those words can be used analogous depending on which environment you're in. And even the word mentoring sometimes is used intermixed in there. Now, sometimes you'll hear people say mentoring as that person you go to every now and then to get their advice on something. Whereas a coach is oftentimes somebody you're working with on a steady basis. Maybe it's weekly, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's daily, whatever it is. A mentor, sometimes you'll hear it distinguished as it's not someone you talk to regularly, but rather somebody you'll talk to on an occasional basis, maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter, once a year. It just varies. Like I know a couple of guys that I would call mentors. I mean, I might talk to them 2, 3 times a year, but when I do, it's a deep conversation. It's a powerful conversation. We really dig in really deep. So, depending on your circles, the words can be interchangeable, but at the same time, there can be differences. So, what I would say is you just have to, whenever you're going to work with somebody, just get clarity as to ultimately what the goal is, how often you're going to work with them, and so forth. And you'll be well on your way.
Mr. Frank, the landscape has changed. What does a modern effective business coach need to understand today that was not as a critical a decade ago?
So, what's changed in a decade is how I understood the question. Uh, and what I would say is that, well, a decade ago, this idea of coaching, especially working with people online, was certainly picking up a lot of steam. You were getting a lot of people getting into the space. And to this day, there's still a ton of people getting into space. So the growth has not slowed down. But people have become a little bit savvier. People have become a little bit pickier because now, 10 years ago, it was like, oh, look, there's this person coaching, that person coaching. But for a lot of people, it still felt a little bit on the niche side, whereas today it's become more of an everyday type thing. So when you're coaching, you have to do some things to distinguish yourself, to stand out a little bit more. But another key thing that's going on today is you have AI, right? We didn't have AI 10 years ago. Certainly not becoming mainstream like it is today, even though it's still in its infancy. And, that's changing the game, right? Because if you can get answers with AI, then it's like, well, what do you need the coach for? Well, and the reality is you need the coach for a lot. When as more information has made its way online, sometimes free, sometimes paid, whatever the case, what that information can't get you is real world experience. And to me, that's maybe one of the biggest differences is today, you really, if you get a good coach, you really are paying someone that really has been there, done that, and they have the battle scars, they have the wounds, so to speak. They have the battle stories, and they live to tell about it. And that's very important. That stuff is priceless because you could line up 10 coaches that have tons of experience, but the stories and the viewpoints is going to vary wildly depending on what their specific experience is, even in the same field. And in business, it's no different, right? Like, so if you're in a business setting, you've got technology all around you, it seems like, in a lot of businesses, in particular corporate businesses, there's tech everywhere. And so again, it becomes a question of, well, if we're going to bring in a consultant to help us, what are they going to do that we can't figure out online or with AI? And the reality is a lot. That consultant can come in there and give specific viewpoints, considerations that you haven't maybe thought of yet. And quite frankly, the computers haven't thought of everything either because there's billions of people in this world. There's lots of perspectives. There's no one person or one piece of tech can capture the viewpoints of billions of people. It's just too varied. You can have two similar viewpoints that are strikingly similar, but what you do with those viewpoints can vary wildly based on the prior experiences of the two different people giving it. So person A experienced this way, person B experienced the exact same thing a different way. They'll have totally different perspectives just because of their background, their history, how they were raised, how they learned and so forth. So, you know, there's a lot of tech today to help teach, but the human factor, I don't know that it's ever been more valuable. I don't know that it has been.
Interesting, Mr. Frank. Interesting indeed. The leader as a coach, how do you convince a result driven, time poor executive that shifting from a commanding style to coaching style isn't an investment, not a self kill diversion?
Can you repeat that? It was a little bit unclear. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, Mr. Frank. How do you convince a result driven, time poor executive that shifting from commanding style to coaching style is an investment, not a soft skill diversion?
So, a results driven executive from to effectively embrace a coaching style. It's interesting. The world of executives, and I remember when I was in IT, we worked with a lot of executives. I used to actually be a consultant for a while, and I actually had a scenario that was just like that. Um, I worked with an executive once. I'll give you two examples. I worked with an executive once who, when I came in to consult his team, I literally met the CEO in person, and he had me go into this conference room that he had. We sat down, and he was not in a good mood, and he basically told me he was about to fire his entire IT department if this issue he brought me in for didn't get fixed. I was a bit younger back then, so it was a little intimidating. I won't kid you. It was a little like, whoa, this guy's not happy and he's ready for results right now. But the reality is he didn't get the results from his own staff, and now me, the outsider, is coming in to fix it. The good news is we did figure out the problem, we did get it resolved, and I gave my feedback on maybe why they missed it. And so it was something that it became clear as the day went on that okay, there was more education that was probably going to be in order there. So it's interesting because as an executive, he went from very frustrated to he was satisfied by the end of the day because the problem was ultimately solved. And when the problem is solved, it's like the tension goes down and people are like, okay. So even someone that's very commanding style as an executive, at the end of the day, they have problems that need to be solved too, and they're seeking answers. They're always, we're all seeking answers to solve problems, which is why we bring in extra help. The second example I would say is there was a client that I remember we worked with, and it was in a, we'll call it a mid-sized market, about 200,000 people. So not a small town, but certainly not a major metropolis. And so, it was had a little bit more of a relaxed feel. Well, they made a huge investment in their IT infrastructure, both with hardware and software, with some financial packages that they were going to run on all this new hardware. I mean, it was quite the investment. And in that scenario, it was kind of a they don't know what they don't know. And this still happens today, happens every day, where a consultant gets brought in because a business may want to accomplish X, Y, Z. They don't really know how to get there. They heard from the sales guy, they like the product, but liking a product in a presentation, which is typically how you see a lot of things sold in the IT space, to practical with your team where everyone on your team is not only involved in the project, but really learning, embracing, and driving the change that now is going to filter into the rest of the company. That was a bit of an undertaking. And I remember consulting with that business. It was a few months. I don't remember exactly how many, but it was a few months. And it was really cool because you didn't just consult, you built relationships with people, you got to know some of the people that were working, you got to see them grow as we brought in this solution and implemented it, and and their team would grow and evolve to where we reached a point where I didn't even have to tell them what to do, they knew what to do, which that was the goal, right? They became self-sufficient as a team as well as individually. And so, there's still a lot of that out there. There's a ton of it that even with all the tech in the world, we still ask the question, how do we use this? How do we make this work for us? And then let's not forget, no matter how much tech we have, there's the human factor, right? And sometimes the coaching, even in a corporate environment, is going to be the human factor. And we just can't ever forget that. As no matter how advanced we are as humans, we still have to learn how to communicate from the time we're born, and the learning never stops. So there you go.
There you go. So, Mr. Frank, as a coach specializing in single family construction and rentals, what are your short term and long term goals?
What you said?
What are your short term and long term goals?
Short term and long term goals. Yeah, that's an interesting question. We've been thinking about those lately because we've been doing this for so long. And the short term goal is pretty easy. We've become very focused that if we take on any projects, whether it's a construction project, a rental that we're going to hold, uh, a scenario where we're going to educate, we want to make sure it's going to be something we enjoy. You know, many years back, you still hear people say this when you're younger investors, they're like, I'll do a deal anywhere as long as it's good. The reality is, I don't want to do a deal anywhere. There's parts of the country that, quite frankly, I don't ever want to do a deal in because it's not, the numbers could be good, but the environment's not something that excites me. And when you end up in projects like that, they just take up brain space. Even if they're profitable, they end up taking up brain space, and it actually ends up taking away from the joy. So we've learned that we really want to be focused and do things in areas where we actually want to be. It's not just about the numbers. Yeah, the numbers are important. Absolutely, they're very important. But what good are the numbers if you're not enjoying the experience? So in the short term, that's like our daily short term goal is, okay, if someone brought us a deal, one of the first questions that goes through my mind is, where is it? I'll literally get on a map and look at where it is. If it's a small town in the middle of some state and there's like nothing nearby, this actually happened recently. Somebody brought me a small hotel, and it's in a small town. I'm not going to name which state it was. Um, and there was nothing. There was nothing exciting, quite frankly, in the area for a good 30 plus minutes. So it's like, why would I do this deal? Like, there's no interstates nearby, there's no heavy commercial, there's not much tourism of any kind. Other than a little bit of nature a half hour away, there's not a lot going on. And that's not an investment we want to take on, even if it works. We want to invest in places that that quite frankly move the soul. That's what I'd say the short term is. Long term, long term, we've looked at getting into some other businesses as well, and not just growing an investment business, but getting into some of the trades. We're so familiar with all of them at this point. They're like, maybe we could do some of them as well, and maybe start combining some stuff. So those, we're kind of in the early phase of that, and so we'll see how that evolves.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Frank, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice to those people who want to be a coach like you?
You gotta love to give. You gotta love to help people. You gotta love to help people. Before I was in real estate, I used to teach music, and I loved it. I loved it. I love seeing people grow. When I was in IT consulting, I mean, the reality is half of what I did was educating, right? I mean, that's what, consulting, you're getting paid to bring value that turns into an improvement for that business. And so, that was something we learned. So when I started doing some real estate coaching, it's kind of like, yeah, been there, done that, but the vibe is a little bit different, right? Corporate, you're working within a structure of a company with specific goals, whatever they are. Real estate's a little bit more personalized because you're probably working with an individual. And a challenge a lot of individuals have is having really clear goals. You would think with all the information online, this would be one of the most, beat a dead horse subjects out there, but it's not. It's not. There's just today I was talking to someone. They just started in real estate, and I asked them, "Well, what's the mission? Not just what your goals. What's the mission? Like, why are we doing this at all?" He didn't really know. He just, oh, it's just something that sounds good so we can make money. Well, if that's your goal in real estate, you're probably not going to be very successful because in real estate's a full contact sport. I mean, it can get crazy intense. It's messy. It's not clean. You're dealing with a lot of personalities. Some are rational, some are not. Some people say and do wild things that just defy every sense of logic. So it gets crazy out there. Um, but it's okay. It's rewarding as long as you're willing to navigate it. And that's the key. At the end of the day, whatever it is you're going to do, be willing to navigate it. And if you're going to teach, that means you're going to have to navigate wild people with crazy perspectives, things that you never ever considered. But remember, everyone has a different background, different upbringing, different life experiences that color how they see what they do. So, as a coach, the more you can recognize whatever that is and adapt, it's very, very helpful.
Well, Mr. Frank, thank you for that advice. And can you please recommend the book of books that influence your journey?
Yeah, so the book I'm going to recommend, there's actually three of them, but there's three different editions, so to speak, because they're covering three different subjects. The book series is called Business is War by J.T. Fox. Phenomenal book. The first book literally talks about this idea of business being war and all the different components and how to succeed in business, and a lot about why failure is your best teacher, whether it's failed partnerships, failed business decisions, failed opportunities, whatever it is, how those are our best teachers. That's when the most growth happens. He then did another book, which is the AI edition. We're in the world of AI, talking about just the immense power and what we can accomplish in that space. And then the third one he actually just released. It's called Millionaire. It's Business is War, Millionaire versus Billionaire Thinking, something like that. But it's this idea of billionaires think different from millionaires, and just taking, like, here's a scenario, here's what a millionaire might say about it, but the billionaire has a totally different viewpoint, which creates a totally different outcome. I highly recommend all three. JT Fox is an amazing individual. He's brilliant, but what I love about his books is he never wastes any words. And if you ever get to meet him in person, he never wastes any words. It's quick, it's efficient. He can say more in 5 minutes than most people I know could say in 5 hours. And that's not an exaggeration, by the way. It's very, very efficient, very effective. And so even as you read the book, when you see how quickly he gets to the point to move the book along on what he's trying to share, it's always a reminder of, man, do I move through my day with that level intentionality when I'm speaking with someone? I think a lot of us would find that when we talk with somebody, we waste a lot of time, a lot of filler words, filler chatter. You won't get that reading these books. It is boom, 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 boom. Um, You could read 5 pages and just be like, all right, stop. I got to go take action. I'll come back. Let me go do things, and then I'll come back and read the next 5 pages. It might even only be 5 paragraphs. Like it's incredibly efficient. So those would be the books I recommend. The Business's War series from J.T. Fox. Phenomenal stuff.
Phenomenal indeed, and thank you so much for sharing your recommended book, Mr. Frank. Reflecting on your own journey, what was the most transformative piece of coaching you ever received, and how did it reshape your approach?
The most transformative piece of coaching I ever received. Well, there's quite a few. So the first one that comes to mind, because I did have some coaching with JT Fox, I was just talking about, and we were in the middle of a bunch of challenges, and I was telling him what we were doing, and he said to me, "You know what your problem is?" And I said, "Of course." I said, "What?" And he said, "You're too nice." That's it. You're too nice. And when I heard that, he was right. Because I was too nice, I was not being assertive with the people I needed to be assertive with, and that caused a lot of problems. So, yes, you want to be a nice person, but don't be too nice. This is business. And as he says, business is war. And that war is very real. Okay, it's very, very real. So, you can be kind, you can be cordial, you can be professional, but don't be too nice because people can and will try to take advantage. Unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's just human nature. So that'd be one thing I would say. The other thing I would say is I sat at a house. This was probably a couple of years ago now. And it was actually a weekend event being held by a gentleman. He was a billionaire down in Florida. Not was, he is. And he was introduced to us through JT's network. And he said 3 words that quite frankly just simplifies the world of business. Business is simple, but people complicate it. We're really good in this world about complicating the simplest of things. I think we all can take a look at the media and just some of what's going on and see that plain as day. But at this particular event, this gentleman who was a billionaire, he said, business is not only easy, it's almost like there is a secret to success in business. And he said 3 words: business is people. That's it. Business is people. If you can get the people right, you'll get the business right. Don't get me wrong, you're gonna have to work hard. I don't want to oversimplify this, but at the same time, I kind of do. Business is people. Get the people right. And sometimes we forget that in our tech world where it's like everything we communicate has to be a text message. No, it does not have to be a text. Texting's great, right? It has its place and it's extremely handy. But first things first, it's not business as texting, it's business as people. So we really got to put effort in to understanding people. And that's hard work. But the good news, no matter how hard it is, it never ends. As long as you keep meeting people, you'll have an opportunity to get better at this idea of business as people and how to really make sure we're serving in our business the various people we come across.
Business are people. Definitely, I agree with you, Mr. Frank. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in 5th season, abstract poetry in 2nd season, and my book 101 review in 5th season too, comedy 101 3rd season, and my food 101 in 6th season, geography 101 of love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 our 4th season, science 101, sex 101 is in 2nd season, and my baby podcast, law 101, mental health 101, and Bible verses 101. And coming this December, entrepreneur 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Frank, if you could get every business leader in the world to embrace one core principle about coaching tomorrow, what would it be and why?
Core principle that I could get every coach in the world to embrace. Never stop learning. As long as you're working with people, you're going to keep learning. No matter how much you know, people will still surprise you. And that's the beautiful thing about people is it's an endless opportunity to learn. And by the same token, it's an endless opportunity to make an impact. Because if there's an opportunity to learn, there's an opportunity to make an impact. That'd be my thoughts.
Mr. Frank Iglesias, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Was
Mr.
that a
Frank?
was that a
Yes.
question? It was a little unclear at the end.
Yes, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your projects, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah. Well, I tell people if you want to connect with me, you can find me on social media, no problem. Just hit me up on Facebook. That'd be the easiest place to find me. Or you can connect with me on my website at frankiglesias.com. And I'd love to chat with you. And let's see if we can have a conversation, how we can help each other.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Frank Iglesias because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy, more and more empowering coaching to come. So, Mr. Frank, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Maricam people, see you soon.